Here's the trick that, well, kept men alive when the cold tried its hardest to kill them. During the brutal winters of World War II, soldiers faced an enemy far deadlier than bullets: cold. On the Eastern Front, temperatures could plummet below -40 degrees. Frostbite honestly ate through feet faster than infection, and even the toughest leather boots turned to stiff, useless shells. But among elite mountain units and frontline troops there existed a crude yet effective trick. An ancient survival method, actually, revived out of sheer desperation. They learned to heat and waterproof their boots with animal fat. It wasn't glamorous, but it worked so well that it saved lives. And today it's a forgotten art, one that modern survivalists and outdoor explorers can still use, really, when warmth and dryness mean the difference between comfort and disaster. So, let's go back in time, to the trenches, the frozen forests, and the makeshift bunkers, and uncover how soldiers learned to turn butcher scraps into life-saving gear maintenance tools. And I'll show you how the same principle can be applied in your own modern survival setup, even if you don't have access to wartime resources. Why soldiers turn to animal fat as their secret weapon against frostbite. Leather boots, especially those issued during the Second World War, were thick but not waterproof. Once they froze or soaked through, soldiers couldn't dry them by a fire without cracking the leather. Traditional oils were scarce. Linseed castor and waxes were being rationed for machinery and munitions. But one thing every encampment had access to, especially those stationed near supply lines or hunting regions, was animal byproducts. Rendered tallow from beef or mutton, lard from pigs, or even bear grease in some regions became makeshift boot preservatives. These fats, when heated and rubbed into the leather, formed a natural waterproof barrier that kept moisture out and warmth in. Soldiers would often remove the bootlaces, set their footwear near a low flame or a heated rock, and gently rub the fat into every seam, crack and crease, until the leather gleamed. Once cooled, the surface stiffened slightly, forming a protective, flexible shell that repelled slush, rain, and snow. This practice wasn't invented during the war. It was rediscovered. The same trick had been used by explorers, trappers, and even Roman legions centuries earlier. But under wartime conditions, where supply chains broke down and soldiers were forced to improvise, it became essential once again. How the process was done step by step in the field. The method varied slightly depending on what was available, but the principle remained the same. First, fat was rendered down, heated slowly in a metal tin, helmet or mess pot until the solid separated and a clear grease formed. This was strained with cloth to remove any impurities. The soldiers would then warm their boots, not over open fire, but near enough to soften the leather. Then came the key step, massaging the warm fat into the leather using cloth fingers or sometimes even a stick. The heat helped the pores open, allowing the grease to seep deep into the fibres. Once the boots cooled, the soldiers repeated the process once or twice more, creating layers of fat that effectively sealed out moisture. The final step was always wiping away excess fat and buffing lightly, just to prevent dirt from sticking. The boots would darken, gain a dull sheen, and feel slightly heavier. But those same boots could now withstand days of marching through snow without freezing solid. It wasn't a perfect fix, but it was often the only thing standing between a man and frostbite. This method isn't just a curiosity from history, it's a practical skill that honestly still works. In an off-grid, long-term survival situation where synthetic waterproofing sprays or silicone treatments aren't available, animal fat remains one of the most effective natural waterproofing agents. Hunters, bushcrafters and wilderness trekkers can replicate it today with minimal effort. If you find yourself outdoors for extended periods, especially in cold, damp conditions, you can follow the same wartime process. Save rendered fat from cooking, bacon grease, beef tallow, or even deer fat. Slowly heat it until liquid, strain it, and store it in a small tin. Then, before heading out, warm your boots gently and apply the fat in thin layers. It not only waterproofs the material, but also keeps leather supple and prevents cracking. For those wearing modern synthetic boots, the principle still applies. Fat can be replaced with natural oils or beeswax to achieve similar results. But, the beauty of the World War II method really lies in its self-reliance. This technique is, a perfect example of how necessity forced soldiers to rediscover old-world skills. When technology failed, they turned to nature, and honestly, good old common sense. They used what they had, bones, scraps and animal remnants, to create materials that kept them alive in impossible conditions. It's a reminder that survival isn't always about gadgets or gear. It's about adaptability. Knowing how to turn waste into utility, how to preserve tools, and how to use the basic chemistry of fats and heat to create protection. In fact, some historians note that special units, like Finnish ski troops and German Gebirgsjäger, made fat-treating boots part of regular maintenance routines. They even used leftover grease on rifle stocks to prevent rust, a detail that shows how multifunctional these crude materials really were. If you ever want to test this method for yourself, do it with care. Use small portions of rendered fat and apply it on natural leather, not synthetic or coated materials. Let it soak overnight and see how water beads on the surface the next day. It's not only a practical exercise, but honestly a connection to the men who endured winter warfare with only the simplest tools and instincts to guide them. There's also a deep satisfaction in learning these lost crafts. They remind us that survival isn't just about strength. It's about knowledge, patience, and understanding the materials nature provides. When you treat your gear this way, you're carrying forward an unbroken thread that connects you to the endurance and resourcefulness of the past. The lost art of heating boots with animal fat may sound primitive, but it's one of those time-tested survival secrets that worked when nothing else did. Soldiers trusted it because it was simple, reliable, and based on a fundamental understanding of nature's materials. If you're a history buff, a survivalist, or just someone fascinated by the intersection of war and wilderness, this is one skill worth remembering. If you found this deep dive valuable, make sure to subscribe to Echoes of Valor for more forgotten wartime innovations that still have real-world applications today. Share this with someone who appreciates practical history, because the knowledge that once kept men alive in war might just keep you alive one day too.